Okay, welcome everyone. So welcome to our Deal Clinic Live. This is our first Deal Clinic of 2022, but by all means not our first Deal Clinic Live ever. There will be snippets of this going out onto our other platforms, our social media platforms such as Facebook and YouTube. For those of you investors that have registered for the live, you'll receive the live recording of this to replay at your convenience. I would like to encourage interaction because it does help build and nurture the relationship, it builds trust, and also you're able to see a more in-depth picture of what's being presented and what's also available to you. So with us today, we have Peter Child and Kelvin Hugh, who are partners at Property Investment Complete. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello. Hiya. Hiya.
And we also have Vicky Hernandez, who is one of our legal experts in property, and she's with Royds Whitty King. Hello, Vicky.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So I can see that we have with us, I think 3 participants already, which is lovely to see. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So today we'll be going through with Peter and Kelvin, we'll be going through a couple of deals that they have completed to show you what they're capable of and what they can deliver. And then in the further slot later on, we'll also have them present a live deal that's available currently on the platform. Vicky will be here to go through and guide you through the actual purchasing process from a legal perspective. Okay, perfect. So I shall kick off. I'm going to do just a brief intro with regards to the gentleman. They're a UK, so just a snippet really. Property Investment Complete are a UK-based sourcing, construction and property management company. Now they cover areas such as Leeds, Wakefield, Sheffield, Manchester and Liverpool, and look after multiple strategies such as buy-to-let, multi-lets and HMOs, and they also work with flips. Now they've been with Sourcing Investments since summer last year, so June they joined, and they deliver great results. So we have average yields of 10.4% with them. They'll be able to guide you in the places best to invest depending on your strategy and where to steer clear from. Their services include lettings as well as the building teams themselves, and they also have had more than 30 years experience within the property sector specifically, and obviously they're fully up to date with their compliance. So with that, I'm going to actually share my screen and play you a video. Some of you will have seen this video in the marketing campaign, so I'm going to share that with you now. And then I'm also going to share with you what's available on their landing page. Perfect. So that is what you will have seen. And I'm now going to show you, sorry, this is my tech abilities. I'm sure you're all smiling. I'm now going to show you actually what you would see on their landing page when you actually reach out to them to converse with them there. Okay, bear with me. perfect. I'm sure you would agree that that really highlights their level of work that they can complete projects to and their attention to detail. So I would like to now hand you over to Peter and Kelvin for them to guide you through their projects. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share my screen, and then I'll pass it over to Peter to give you a background about ourselves.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. So I'm Peter, and obviously that's Kelvin. The company started in 2013. Primarily, we started as a sort of letting company, but then we built up the property investment side of the company, sourcing properties for investors in 2018. We've done probably over 100 deals in the last sort of 3-4 years as it's coming up to now. So we saw this work on obviously the sourcing side, but we can then offer, with our experience, the refurbishment side and what works for tenants if we do a HMO or if it's a flip, what the market's like, and sort of the type of properties that tenants are looking at buying that's up to speed with the current sort of market trends, let's say. There was only in-house letting team in Wakefield, Leeds, Sheffield, Manchester and Birkenhead, which is Liverpool. And we obviously have access to a development team that works for us. And like I said, it started in 2013 and it's grown from there. So we service Wakefield. Wakefield is an area that's very close to Leeds, and we get a lot of overflow from Leeds into Wakefield. And the city's sort of growing at around about 20,000 population-wise over the next 5 years. So there's great expansion in the Wakefield and surrounding areas. We've got offices in Leeds where the market in Leeds is buoyant, very buoyant, to the extent that on the HMO side we haven't actually got any rooms available. And we're finding on the letting side that the letting side of the business is grown to the extent that we're running at around about 96-97% occupation at the moment. So when we target areas where we've got high demand, and we do a lot of research, making sure that, one, we can sort of manage and let properties out. Two, there's a demand in that area and there's growth for equity for the investor. And three, what type of dynamics we've got in each of those areas. So, you know, you've got blue collar work, you've got white collars, and you've got a mixture of other industries in each city. And we make sure that we market, do sort of strategic marketing to make sure that we've sort of checked out that we're in the right locations. Hence why we're strong in Leeds, Wakefield, Sheffield, Manchester, very strong in Manchester, and Liverpool. So obviously Sheffield, it's an area that we've moved into the last sort of 18 months, and we're finding that area is growing. The house prices in that area are still at a reasonable price, and we're able to identify and source properties so we can give good returns back to the investors, both in equity growth and returns on the rental income. So we've got an office in London, which has started 18 months ago. That office does primarily letting, sourcing, and has just gone into the refurbishment side of it in the last 4 months. London's market was on a decline. It was the only area in the UK that was on a decline, but we're now seeing starting to turn, and the increase in the London area is probably growing now, because we're on the ground, probably quicker than most areas in the UK. If we can just go on to the next slide, Kelvin. So we've got, keep going, Kelvin, past Manchester. So what do? We will identify properties that can be HMOs, can be flips, can be buy-to-lets, single lets. We'll also identify developments that may be on a larger scale, up to sort of 2-3 million from a development perspective, for apartment blocks as well. So we have some developments at the moment that we're currently working with sourcing investments that have really good returns if it's a cash return you're looking for, or if it's a buy to let, and there's good returns on the buy to let side of it as well on these developments. Just go down to the next one. So in London, that's our directors in London that run our London location. They've got quite a lot of experience in the letting industry, over 10 years, and they previously worked for Foxtons. And Foxtons is the largest estate agent in the UK, but primarily work in the London and the surrounding areas. So we've got a full managed service in London, and I think, like I've said to you, we are now sourcing properties and refurbishing properties in that area, which we've done over the last few months. That's the process as we see it. So basically we speak to investors, find out what properties they're looking for, and we look at the budget that they've got, and then we identify properties that we put on the sourcing website, and then we'll organise the quotes. We can arrange the legal process and the refurbishment side. We then have the management, and then if you need to refinance, we can support you with people that we've got relationships with to refinance if needed. And then some investors like to then obviously continue with that process. So again, we can source properties for you, making sure that we achieve the returns that you're looking for. This is just some of the modelling and some of the sort of presentation of how we can make and how we make the properties look. We try and go for a high-end finish. We go for professional working individuals or couples. And our market is more aimed at the high end of the market. There's the floor plan, so we can sort of show you what the building looks like, when you buy it, and what it'll look like when it's finished, so you get a full layout of the property, which gives you a feel of what we're trying to achieve, because we try and give, particularly on the HMOs, space to the tenants, which makes the retention of the tenants much better. From investors, obviously, for us to, when we source properties for you, for us to source them under your name, there's certain information that we need from you, so we can then arrange for that property to be taken off the market and put into your name, so you can then purchase the property. Obviously, give a full valuation of refurbishment. So, and we'll try and give estimates on valuations. We're not RIG surveyors, but we can get RIG surveyors out. Again, we've got contacts where they can give you a full valuation report if that's what you require. And we obviously work quite closely with a lot of investors, so we understand what the market is currently giving from a return to investors and what the value of the properties estimated will be after we've completed the works. And we've got a couple of examples. So these are examples that we've done where we've purchased a property, the cost of refurbishment, the valuation, what we converted the property into, so it's a 6-bed, the rental income, and then the net return to the investor, excluding that they've got a mortgage. And we have running costs within those numbers of, it's roughly around between 20 and 25%. So we'll put a running cost of an HMO, so that's utilities, insurance and things like that, that you would have on running that property, so you can see sort of the net return then for the investor on that investment. And then we've done another example there, and again we purchased the property for the investor, refurbed it. That's the valuation as it came out at the end of it, with converting into a 5-bed HMO. That's the net rental income. That's the refinancing, and that investor got all the money back out through the refinancing. That doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen. It's about us finding good deals for the investors that we work with. So you've got different types of purchases. So we've got people that are cash purchasers and just want to work their money harder and get a return on it. We've got people that want to purchase and need finance, or mortgages, bridging loans, and they're looking for an ROI return. So we can help investors, and whichever route they take, whether the cash purchase or they need to raise finance, we can work with the investors to to work on whichever model you work on, whether it's ROI or just a straight percentage return. On a straight percentage return, we try and get 10%, between 10 and 12% on average. And then on the ROI, we will try and achieve returns of around about 30 to 35%. That's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. At the moment, we don't have any questions that have come in through via the investors. And I'd just like to say that we have so far 5 investors attending live. We welcome to Bowen, Chloe, Mehmet, Michael and Walter. Very appreciative for you to turn up, join the live. I actually have a question just to kick off something there with regards to you featured conversions mainly. Is there any time that you've been or that you've had to have maybe a conversation with a new investor who has heard great things about conversions and HMOs and has wanted to maybe convert something that would sit better as a buy to let to a conversion, to convert to a HMO where, and you've had to go through the numbers with them and explain that actually it probably isn't the best way to move forward? Has that ever happened, just out of curiosity?
We've converted buy to let to HMOs, and we've gone through obviously the numbers, and where we've had the instances of that happening, the investor currently owns the property, so they've converted it into an HMO, but that's the only instances where we've had that.
Okay, perfect. So that's brilliant. Thank you for answering that. I have had a question from Bowen. He's asked, is your yield, your net yield, referring to buy to let or HMO?
HMO.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I hope that helps, Bowen. And I have another question with regards to give the investors a full picture. Obviously, you know, we here at Sourcing Investments feel that your company is very conscientious in the whole process. Can you explain how the process has been with the platform so far for yourselves? Because you have had, you know, you've completed a couple of deals now, haven't you, through the platform? Can you just explain to the investors how you feel that's gone?
I feel like it's gone well. I mean, we've had a few deals now that have gone through, and I feel the platform, how it's helped us is, I think the issue we had before was because we were getting new business through word of mouth, really, and we did the occasional marketing. So we needed a platform where the process was standardized, where we were able to reach out to investors, where obviously both ourselves and the investors protected as well. We found Sourcing Investments and we thought we'd trial it for a little bit, and then we found we got a lot of inquiries coming through, which was obviously great from our end, but we were also able to reach areas we haven't gone to before. So we've had investors from Canada, from Africa, South Africa, Australia, places we've not had. So it's allowed us to broaden our audience, but also I think also from an investor point of view, it allows them to see deals that they don't get on the market, so off-market deals, stuff that we haven't advertised anywhere else apart from Sourcing Investments. So in that regards, I think it's been really useful.
I think the good thing as well, I think the thing that has attracted us to the Sourcing Investment is it protects us as a business, but it also protects the investor. And I think that's important, that, you know, you're trying to manage, and you are doing, and looking after both parties to make sure that everybody's protected. I think that's very important, you know, from our side as well, but also from the investor.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, Peter, because it is something that we really do aim to do, to look after both parties. It's not that we're invested in one side versus another, or heavily more looking after one aspect or the other. We really do try to look at the complete picture and make sure that all parties involved are being looked after as carefully as each component really to the puzzle. So I'm really pleased that you did mention that. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Vicky, was there anything that you would like to maybe cover with what Peter and Kelvin have mentioned during that presentation?
I think the thing that really stood out for me was the sort of diagram at the end in terms of the process, and obviously as a lawyer I'm just a part of the process, but one of the things I was going to mention today, if there were time, was you know, how important it is to have a team that collaborate, because we're not just individuals. You know, I'm a lawyer and that's great, I can do that bit, but I need to speak to my client sourcing agent, the estate agent, the people dealing with the mortgage. So you know, something like this platform, or whoever you're working, it's so important that everybody's talking, because we're not little silos doing a job. You know, we're trying to work collaboratively, and I think we don't always do that. You know, as a legal profession, we don't always do it, and I think if you can get the right team around you as an investor, that's really key to kind of getting this journey right.
I would agree with that, absolutely, 100%. And I think as investors, when we first start out, I'll talk about my journey, when we first start out within the journey space itself, we want to do everything ourselves. We want to have that control. And actually, the real power comes, as you mentioned, from the power team, and having having a sourcing agent that you can trust, having that legal advisor, the mortgage advisor, and having all of those components pulled in really not only helps and supports you through that journey, but it's also powerful, because you're able to outsource that work, and then you're not overloading yourself with all the duties that you actually don't need to take on board, which is really, really important. Thank you for that. I have had another question from Bowen. He's basically said, what's for buy to let? Net yield is deducted all costs like legals and sourcing expenses, right? So actually that could go to either Peter or Kelvin, or either Vicky. I think maybe Peter and Kelvin could answer that from a sourcing agent's perspective.
Yeah, I mean,
what's for buy to let?
When we do the returns, we put everything into the pot. So we include legal, stamp duty, refurbishment, any sort of costs that, additional legal costs, things like that. We try and put everything into the return that we give you. It's very rare. I'm trying to think of an occasion when we might have missed something. I can't think of anything. But I think the one thing that the investor has to do, they have to do their own due diligence as well, and not just rely on what we say or what Vicky might say. I think you have to do your own homework as well, and check to make sure you've captured everything as well. But we always try and put everything in. So when we give you the net return, it takes into account all those costs that you may incur or that you would incur.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Peter. I think that's really important to know. And Michael's actually asked, it feels like a similar question with regards to what Bowen's asked here about whether the costs are deducted or not. Michael, please correct me if I'm wrong with that. Feel free to message. But his question is, on sourcing investments, I've looked at a few HMO deals with quite extensive renovations, but the before and after valuations were unchanged. Does refinance reflect the pre-renovation valuation, or the post valuations are excessively conservative? Can refinance be based off rental yield or just bricks and mortar valuation? Gentlemen, would you like to answer the last part? I can do the first part, but can refinance be based off rental yield or just bricks and mortar valuation?
It's all dependent on the property, and it's all dependent on what you're converting it into. So if you take a HMO, once you get to sort of 7 and above, you're looking at commercial valuations, which is completely different to residential. If you're looking at sort of 4 to 6 bed, the way that and every surveyor is different, every valuer is different, but they'll typically look at bricks and mortar. That's the first thing they'll look at. And then they'll look at the rent returns that you're getting. And then from that, they'll create a valuation, they'll generate a valuation on that property, taking those two factors into account. They'll also take into account the money you've spent on the property. So what you've refurbed, if you put new kitchen, new extension, convert the loft, convert the cellar, whatever it might be, all those will add to the value of that property from a bricks and mortars perspective. And they will take rents into account. But we are not rich surveyors. If you want a true valuation before you press the button, then again, we can help get a rich surveyor to give you a valuation, so you're more comfortable with the number moving forward, and they'll give you it in writing.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you for that. I think that's really very clear. And I hope that answers your question, Michael. But with regards to the part about the refinance, does the refinance reflect the pre-renovation or post-renovation, and are they excessively conservative? All sourcing agents have to complete a template, And so there's calculations in the background. Now, the calculations are conservative because we would rather be conservative than not. And then you can, as an independent investor, take the calculated risk that you're prepared to. But we have to put in a calculation that can, it is quite generalized, but the calculation there is to cover all risk factors. Some investors have very high thresholds for risk, and some don't. So that's a very independent and personal thing. So the calculation in the background has to go in as conservative. And then if you are happy to take the risk, then obviously you can do so depending on where your risk management levels are for your business and for yourself. I hope that answers that question there for you. Just to come back to you, gentlemen, Bowen's has another question. He's asked, do you sourcing commercial to residential? So do you source commercial to residential, and what are the general numbers he should look at?
So on the platform at the moment, we've got an actual property on the sourcing platform, and that was 10 offices that we converted into 8 apartments, which has got planning permission to do that. So yes, we do it. We convert commercial to residential, and we have a live example on the portal at the moment.
Okay. So Bowen, if you have a look at their platform on their landing page on the platform, I will type in the landing page again for you. I've already sent that into the link, so their link to their landing page is already there, but I will do that again. And then if you just have a look for that deal, maybe have a look through it, go through the calculations yourself, and then if you have any questions, please reach out to Peter and Kelvin with regards to that. Bowen said, well received. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so Michael has a couple of more questions. How do you see the high-end market versus, say, social housing? So social housing deals.
So when they do the valuation on the properties, the valuers, they will ask the type of tenants that you have in that property, and that will have an effect, positive and negative, on the valuation of that property. So social housing obviously would be, the valuation, in my experience, would be less than if you had professional working individuals in there. And that's because basically the way the valuer looks at it is the property would be more protected and looked after by a professional working individual than in social housing. And that's how they look at it. Perfect.
Thank you for that, Peter. And then there's also a calculation, isn't there, where you have the local housing associations fees, where what they're prepared to pay as a top end for per calendar month. So those are all considered taken into consideration, Michael, when they're factored in when those numbers are factored in. Okay, perfect. So far, so good. All things have been answered there. What I'm going to do now is hand over to Vicky. So Vicky Hernandez is one of our lawyers at Royds Whitty King. They actually deal specifically in property law and specialise in commercial property law and its intricacies. So I'm going to hand over now to Vicky to just speak about what they specialise in and actually what she does. Thank you. Vicky, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yes, hi everyone. I'm Vicky from Royds Whitty King. We are a law firm based in London, but across the Thames Valley. I'm personally in Oxford. Well, I'm at home actually, as we all are, but I'm based in Oxford. And we cover the whole of England and Wales from a property perspective. So I don't deal with Oxford properties per se. I deal with properties across the country. And Royds Whitty King offers, full service. So we do all types of law, probably except for criminal. But me and my team, we deal specifically with commercial and residential property. And just to give you a bit of background on that, I've been qualified 20 plus years, and probably the first 10 plus years of that, I was doing only commercial property. Acting for big pension funds. I worked at a big city firm in London, moved out to the Thames Valley and started acting for sort of some smaller clients as well. And I found probably about 8 years ago, there seemed to be a bit of a gap in the market. We've got lots of residential conveyancers in the country, many of whom specialise in sort of people moving house. But I had lots of commercial clients who were perhaps looking at residential property and finding they wanted a more commercial service. You know, they didn't need the you know, the sort of emotional support side of moving house from a lawyer, but what they did want was someone who approached it in the same way as they would a commercial transaction. So I sort of got into it by chance, but now end up working. I do a lot of commercial and some quite complicated option development work as well, but I also do, and probably a third of my work is now for residential properties. So that would be anything from assisting somebody who's just on the start of that buy-to-let journey, buy their first buy-to-let property, through to people, you know, we've got clients who have multiple 100+ properties of a residential type in a portfolio, and we've been doing lots of work recently in terms of incorporating those. I'm sure people will realise that for tax reasons it's not great anymore to hold property in individual names, so we've done lots of work incorporating portfolios that were held by individuals into, you know, a corporate entity. But what I thought I would just sort of speak about briefly this morning was just a typical transaction, how it works, because sometimes I sit down with clients and they think they know how things work and they're not quite right, or they actually don't have a clue and they don't like to ask. So I thought, let's start basic. I'm very happy to answer questions. I don't want to lecture people about what they already know, but I thought if I just run through that, if there's time later, I did have a few sort of top tips and things that I can share depending on what people are interested in. But the thing I was going to say really on that process is a question really that gets asked of me is when should we involve you in a deal? And I think most people think, you know, they're going to find a property, they get their offer accepted, and then they tell the solicitor about it. And that's fine, you know, that works particularly when you're moving house. You probably don't need a solicitor earlier than that. But what I would say with my clients who are buying investment property is it's really helpful to involve me slightly before that. For example, I act for lots of clients who just do HMOs. That's, you know, that's their thing, that's what they're great at. And I would always say to them, you know, once you found a property that you think that's probably going to be one that you're going to offer on, just send me an email, send me the details, send me the address, and we'll have a quick look at the title. And in sort of 10 minutes, I can have a look. And there are sometimes restrictions on titles that prevent you doing certain things with the property or impose obligations on how you can use a property. And one of the things for an HMO in particular is it might say you can only let this can only be a dwelling and it can only be occupied by a single family. And that can be an issue for an HMO because an HMO clearly is not a single family always. It's perhaps a group of individuals. So something like that, I'm very happy. You know, we don't charge. This is a sort of collaborative, ongoing relationship. But just send me through the details. If we can pick up any red flags, there may well be solutions. I'm not saying that we wouldn't do the deal, but just let me know at the start, and then we can, you know, we're pre-warned, I suppose, and we can deal with anything sooner rather than later. I would also say if you're going to get a solicitor, you know, contact them in advance, go through all the nightmare know your client formalities. There's no point finding a property and then spending 2 weeks trying to verify your passport. You know, may as well get that done out the way. So that the point at which you've had your offer accepted, I get a memo of sale and we can hit the ground running. You know, at that point, pretty much day one, we can be contacting the seller solicitor saying, please, can we have the contract pack? We're good to go. So that really is day one of a transaction for me as a lawyer. And then I would have to say it does depend very much how it can take 2 weeks for us to receive a contract pack, which can be quite frustrating when people are kind of keen to get going. If you've got a seller who's been a bit proactive and, you know, filled in their forms in advance and the contract pack's ready, then we might get it within a day or so. But I would say on average, you might be looking 2 to 3 weeks before you even get the pack. And that's another thing that I would do with my clients. I think the normal thing is to wait until you've received the contract pack as a lawyer and then submit searches. And what we say is, especially at the moment, there are huge delays sometimes for certain local authorities in getting search results back. So we always say, you know, if you're comfortable just to take the risk, let's order the searches on day one, because then you've got those two timelines running alongside one another. You're waiting for your contract pack, but at least your searches are on order, so we're not adding additional delay. But in terms of the sort of next step, as soon as we've got the contract pack, that's great because we've got most of the information. We may well, if we've had a delay on getting the contract pack, also have search results by that point. So it does very much mean that at that stage, we can review everything in one go, and we would, depending on the quality of the information provided with the contract pack, raise some inquiries with the seller solicitors to say, you know, what due diligence we need to do, and we will from a legal point of view review the title, look at restrictions, obligations, rights, etc. Review the search results, make sure there's no red flags in terms of sort of planning history, notices that have been served on the property owner. And then we'll pull together a report for our client once we've got replies to those inquiries. And I suppose the timeline, if say on average we're waiting maybe 2 weeks for a contract pack, we may then be waiting another 2 weeks for replies to inquiries. So an average transaction, leaving aside lending for a moment, probably takes 6 weeks from the point of a memo of sale to the point of exchange. It should be much quicker. It could be much quicker, but the UK legal system is what it is, and that is what we have to deal with. So I would say allow at least 6 weeks to get to that point. Once we've reported to you on a property, we then sometimes have a Zoom call or phone call, or depending on you know, whether I've got a client I've worked with lots and lots or it's a new client, we're happy to engage as much as you might need in terms of support and information about property and making sure you're comfortable to proceed. And then it's a question of exchanging contracts. Not to tell anyone things that they already know, but with a property, we would normally exchange contracts and commit to a completion date in the future. So you might say we're going to exchange contracts one Friday and then complete the purchase of the property the following Friday, for example. That's really common where people are moving house because they need time sometimes to arrange removals, to start packing up, etc. Where we're dealing with investment property, often we'll have a simultaneous exchange and completion because there's no need necessarily to fix a completion date in advance. But that would be, you know, if you've got a timeline between exchange and completion, then you've probably got another week onto your minimum of 6 weeks to get to the completion date. And the other thing I would sort of just bring into that process, I haven't particularly mentioned lending, but you will be, if you're getting lending on a property, you know, we can assist with that throughout the process, but it will add a bit more time often because we'll be waiting for mortgage offers to come in, and then there's at the relevant stages of that transaction, we'd be engaging with the lender to provide reports on title and the things that they need, so that at the point of exchange, we're happy, all the funds are in place, the lender will be releasing funds on the completion date, and you know, we're all on the same page and ready. So that's a really quick whiz through of the process. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That's brilliant, Vicky. Thank you so much. I have actually added your link to your power team, to yourself and your power team within the platform, and I've asked the investors to feel free to contact you with any questions that they have. I think that was brilliant to know, just so that because it actually raised a question with myself, because I think from an investor's perspective, especially when you start out in the journey, there's heaps of questions that you have, but sometimes and correct me if I'm wrong, but from speaking with my own circle of friends, no matter what facet of life I've gone through, speaking to my own circle of friends, and I have friends who are lawyers, by the way, but when you're engaging with a lawyer as the client, there's a preconceived conception there that the lawyer's going to drag it out, they're going to take as long as they need, and obviously that will increase their invoicing. And I think as an investor, when you're starting out, you that's kind of in the background of your mind, thinking, well, can I afford this? And it may restrict them at points of contact to think, well, maybe I could go and ask a friend, or maybe I could find this on, you know, the internet, when really they need that professional advice that's specific to that transaction and that property. I would ask you, how many, you mentioned the 6 week exchange or completion date, should I say, how many points of contact is like the average in a normal, easy 6 week completion process?
Points of contact with a client.
With the lawyer. So I, as an investor, to
Yeah.
contact yourselves, how many times would you expect to, or is the usual?
I don't think there's a norm, and I think it depends, you know, on the client concerned. So for example, I have some clients I've worked with for 20 years. They don't want to hear from me. They trust that I'm doing my thing, and I'll tell them when I'm happy, and you know, then we go from there. That's not the norm, but you know, there is that end of the extreme. But communication is really important, and I think you've got to find, you know, the whole team that you have around you has to be right, but you have to have the right lawyer as well, because you have to have someone who engages on the same level as you. So I have many investor clients actually where I just be on a WhatsApp group with them and the sourcing agent and the broker and, you know, whoever they want on that WhatsApp group. And it's not formal, but you know, every so often everyone will just dip in, oh, this update has happened, or I've just done this, or just FYI. And that's really helpful if you like that kind of informal ability to just pick up messages and engage as and when. I have other clients who I might just speak to every Friday, and they're just in my diary, 5 people I phone every Friday, because they just want to know that I've not forgotten them, I suppose. And that's fine too. You know, we work on fixed fees, so I don't mind how a client wants to communicate, but I do like to ask the question at the beginning and say what works for you. And if it's just I'll blind copy you in every email I send, that's okay. You can, if you know, some people like all the details, some hate it. So I don't think there's one size fits all, but I think you have to find a lawyer that you feel, because you don't, I would hate for anybody to think I won't phone Vicky because it might cost me too much, or she's not approachable, or, you know, that's rubbish. Nobody wants that service. So I think it's about what you want. And then maybe as a consumer, being comfortable to communicate, you know, to tell your lawyer how you like to work.
I think that's so key. I think that's so key that you've just mentioned that, because it is all down to personal preference and comfortability as well. And with investors who are new, maybe they may not know that. And I think the fact that you mentioned that there's a flat fee would give the investors more confidence to know that, okay, it doesn't matter how many times. And I love that you're involved in you know, WhatsApp groups, because there, again, when I first started out, there was this whole, you know, impression that you have to email the lawyer and you can't pick up the phone, and it's the so the fact that you are, you know, it's so lovely to hear that, you know, solicitors and lawyers are moving with the journey of time with regards
We're a bit
to
behind the curve, but yeah, we get there eventually.
So thank you for mentioning that, because I do think that's really, really key. Okay, perfect. I will come back to you again after, but really thank you for that. And is there anything that you would be, I'm not sure if you have this, because I've never asked it of you, but is there any like a PDF of a flow chart where a new investor could maybe follow the key points of what's involved and when to contact if necessary? Obviously they can contact you in between that, but the really key points.
Yeah, we do. I can share that with people. We do have various literature, but absolutely.
Perfect. So if any of the investors here or that will watch this later on the replay need that, they can contact
just reach
yourselves
out and we can share it with them. Absolutely.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Vicky. Okay, right. So I'm now going to hand you back to Peter and Kelvin. I think actually Kelvin's going to go through a live deal that's actually on the platform, and going to guide you through that. So Peter and Kelvin, I'll hand the clients back to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. So the deal I'm talking about is one in Wakefield. It's currently a 4-bed all-en-suite HMO. It's currently fully tenanted. It's got 4 professional tenants in. They've all been reference checked, and they're currently managed by our letting agency as well. It's currently on for 200, but and it's currently achieving around about 120 per room. Yeah, well, I'm just looking to sell it on. It's in a great location, so it's roughly about 15 minutes outside of Wakefield Centre. So it's perfect for professionals looking to commute into Wakefield itself or around the surrounding area. The landlord really spec'd this one up, so the entire backyard, one of them has his own private back garden, video comms on doors, so he's really spec'd it up. He's looking for about 200 at the moment, but yeah, it's a really good deal. There's 2 other deals as well that we completed through sourcing investments. They're currently being renovated as we speak, and they're both in Sheffield. So one of them is currently, the investor purchased it for 95, and it's currently, the refurb went for about 60. So the HMOs that we do, we always try to aim for all ensuite HMOs. We always try to maximise the rooms in there as well, and typically we try and aim for between 100 to 120, depending on room size. Where we source for the HMOs, we always try and aim for areas that are near large employment areas. So, for example, the ones in Sheffield are near the Northern General, which is obviously a large employer, because we work closely alongside the NHS or other large employers in that area. So when it does come to letting, it makes it easier to obviously get the interest there for these two properties as well. And then, yeah, that's the two deals we've got at the moment. And then we've got another, that's the deal in Wakefield.
Sorry, Calvin, to interrupt. Can you hear me? Because I don't know if it's me or you breaking up. Vicky's nodding. Vicky, is that a nod for me or is it for Calvin?
Yeah, no, it's not a great line. I don't think I can. It does keep breaking up.
Sorry, gents. Thought I'd just mention it because I want it to be crystal clear.
Okay.
Can hear you, but it's intermittent.
Right. Okay. I don't know how much you've got of that then.
I heard you talk about Wakefield, about the deal. You mentioned, you know, that there was the 95 sale, the refurb was 60, and that you primarily look at things like that and the numbers. And then you mentioned the deal that was on the platform, but I couldn't really hear the granular detail around it. And so I do apologise, but I missed that. I thought it was maybe me, but then it felt like it was you. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, so just going back to what I was talking to before then, so the two deals that we were talking about that we've sold, so they were obviously, they're both in Sheffield, they're both very similar areas to each other. So like I said, we always tend to look for areas of large employees, and we always try and aim outside Article 4 just because of the issues that you have with planning, of course. But so the areas we typically look at in Sheffield, and then Wakefield and Leeds as well, we'll always try and look near large employees. So for example, the property in Wakefield that we've got as a live deal, that's near the West Yorkshire Police HQ, it's near Wakefield College. So that's the kind of criteria that we're looking for when we're sourcing, and that's reflected in a lot of the deals that we've currently got on at the moment. So that's
okay, that was much clearer. Thank you for repeating. Did you have the deal that you're actually looking at, the deal that you mentioned in Wakefield, that's live at the moment? Do you have that with you? Do you have that to present and walk the clients through on the virtual window?
Not at the moment, no.
Oh, okay. So has that been uploaded yet? Sorry,
it's been uploaded, yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. If I share my screen, would you like to guide the client to which one that is? Is that okay? So that the investors have a little bit more understanding of which one that is. Okay, let me have a look. Let me see if I can just share my screen again. Hello. Okay, there's that. Okay, so this is actually Property Investment Complete's landing page. So as you can see, there's a live chat button here, which I'll explain about later. There you've got the lovely Peter there, and then seeing as I've shown Peter's picture, I'll show Calvin's as well. So which deal is this one, Calvin? So then we can actually, are you happy to walk the client through basic information while it's live here?
Yes.
Okay, let me know. Because you said he was in Wakefield, but those are 15. Is it this one?
No,
No?
it's not on. we could talk about a different one.
Yeah, what would you love to talk about? Just to walk I think it's important to be able to walk the investors through so that they can see the numbers behind it.
Okay. Well, let's go through this one, the 4-bedroom house in Wakefield, the one in the middle. Sorry.
The off-market one.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, and then you just guide me through what we need to, where you need me to go.
Yeah, so this is one of the live deals at the moment. It's not the one that we were talking about, but this is also another great one. So this one's just down the road from the one I was referring to. So this is also a 4-bed all-en-suite HMO. It's currently fully tenanted as well. Now this was refurbed roughly about 2 years ago. The landlord for this bought this at a relatively cheap price, and they spent quite a bit in the refurb. So they fully furnished it. It had everything full rip out, full rewire, new plumbing, and everything in there was new at the time. It's had quite a lot of maintenance, refurbishment works done to it quite recently. So it's been brought up to spec again, and it's looking like new. All the tenants in there are all fully professional. It is on for 185 at the moment, and the landlords obviously they're looking just to cash in, but they'll be open to negotiations if someone was to be interested. Area-wise, it's in an area where it's quite popular for residents. It's quite a popular residential area. So nearby, you've got local shops, you've got smaller businesses. So you don't have to go too far to get what you need, essentially. But it's also near the main roads and the public transport routes leading into the centre of Wakefield. So this is always one that lets quite easily with our letting team. And it's, I think, for the price it's on as well, particularly if we're able to negotiate on the price, it would be quite a good steal.
That's brilliant. I'm glad you mentioned that. The photos look amazing, by the way, and it's a really high spec and finish, isn't it? Really, when you look at that, it's actually in working condition, which is why I can see the investors want the fair market value as the asking price. I can see why they want that, because literally whoever purchases this would be able to start cashing in from day one. With the investors, I haven't gone through this pack. Has the investor, sorry, not the investors, are the tenants still in place? So would they inherit the tenants as well?
Yeah, they inherit all the tenants, yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you. All right, perfect. I'm just going to stop sharing because we've got some questions come through. So let me just ask these of you. It says we had questions come through. I can't see the questions. I don't know where the questions have gone. I'm sure I had 3 questions. Okay. Oh, they are. There they are. They're in the normal chat box. Apologies. Okay, so Bowen's asked, is it in Article 4 area, and how do you transfer the license?
It's not in Article 4. It wouldn't need a license because it's a 4-bed. So
Beautiful.
4-bed, you need an HMO license.
Perfect. And he's also asked, do you currently manage, do you currently management account to see income and cost for this HMO? Oh, so I think he means, do you currently manage this? So are you currently the lettings agent that manages this HMO and can see the income and the cost about, so the balance sheet for this HMO?
Yeah,
I hope I've mentioned that right, Bowen. You do?
We do manage this, yes.
Okay, perfect. So obviously, Bowen, if that's something you wish to ask and delve a little bit more deeper in with the gentleman, please do feel free. I'll post the link into their landing page again, but feel free to contact them with regards to any added questions that you want about that. If you wanted to ask more detail around finances, please feel free. Gents, is that something that you're happy to engage in with regards to financial information?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, brilliant. Do you need me to go back in, and should we go through the actual data itself? I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted me to go through. That's a really good gross yield of, I mean, you know, it's nearly 11%, isn't it? Which is really good. And you did mention that normally you aim between 10 to 12, didn't you?
Yeah, so we actually sourced this one. So for this landlord, we did the full package. So we sourced it, renovated it, and we rented it out. So what you see there is what they first got. And in fact, the rents, with the way the rents are going over the past couple of months, we could probably increase them. So I'd say for what they are now, they are quite low. So that might even
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, so that's perfect. So, and this is an off-market deal as well. And so, Bowen, there's more information here about the HMO license and Article 4 areas. So please feel free to go there and have a look. And just so that you know now, this is specifically this property on their landing page. If you do wish to contact Property Investment Complete, all you need to do is actually just, I do apologize, my internet seems a little bit slow, but all you need to do is go to this live chat button here that you can see on the top of their page. Once you click that, it will ask or let you know, in fact, that you're about to start a direct conversation. So you as the investor will begin a direct conversation with this sourcing company. If you press proceed, you'll see, sorry gents, but this will test. So you can see now that it's got here, you're now engaged in a direct conversation, and that will let you know that you're about to have a conversation with the sourcing agents themselves. Is there anything else that you need to cover with regards to that deal? Sorry, Kelvin.
No, I think it's that deal's quite cut and dry in terms of what it's getting. What I think, if anyone wants to be interested in that one, I think there's definitely scope to increase the rents on it, and I think that's all there is really. There'd be no renovation works required. You could let it out as it is, or you could put a bit more money into it and see if you can get a higher rent. I think the deal I was mentioning first that wasn't on there, that's currently achieving around about 125 per room. This one's achieving about 100. So I think if you put a bit of money into it, you could definitely get those kind of rents, because that area definitely achieves those higher end rents.
That's fantastic, thank you. And out of curiosity, I think I'm just going to voice investors questions that they haven't actually asked here yet. But when will you be uploading that one that you've mentioned right at the beginning, but isn't on the platform yet live? The other one that you're referring to?
Yes, I will be.
Yeah, so that will be done by the end of the week for sure. They'll be able to see that as well. Okay, perfect. Vicky, was there anything that you would like to add to, especially maybe around HMOs and licensing and anything like that that you've seen in your journey from a legal perspective? Would you like to update investors or share any insights with regards to that?
I think I mean, I think if you've got the right lawyer, they will pick up the right questions. But in terms of that relationship between, you know, an investor or client and the solicitor, what's really helpful, what helps me help you is if you tell me up front what you're worried about or what you're planning. So, you know, don't at the last minute tell me it's going to be an HMO and I didn't know at the beginning, because I've not had that on my radar. Or equally, you know, if clients are intending to convert things, do particular works, it's always useful to know. So they might, for example, be assuming they can use general permitted development rights, and for some reason they've been disapplied in a previous planning permission. Or if the more information you give me about what you're proposing, the better I can do my job, really, because it's much better that you tell me on day one and I look out for something than you tell me almost after the event and then we have to scrabble around to work out if that is going to be okay. So whether that's an HMO or whatever it might be, you know, it goes back to your point about not feeling that you have to limit the amount of time you speak to your solicitor. Actually, it's good to speak, and it's good to, you know, to understand what a plan is for the future. So that's really important, I think, just to make sure that the solicitor, yeah, and also share your survey with me. All my clients will send me the survey when it's done. And you know, I haven't seen these properties. I can only go by what the paperwork is. So if you send me the survey, there's often bits in there that I would have had no idea about if I hadn't, you know, reviewed what was being said. So that's useful as well.
I think that's actually a really, really valid point about sharing as much information with you as possible. And I think you mentioned it earlier in your first bite, where you spoke about the potential investment, you know, really helping your clients protect their finances, because they may go into a project or they think it looks great, but there's a covenant or a restriction hidden in the background that actually won't allow them to add value the way they you perceive them being able to add that value. And then, as you mentioned here, you know, having the intention of maybe converting a property into a HMO, but not sharing that with you, it's almost like Pandora's box being opened, isn't it, really, for yourselves, I can imagine.
It's just useful to know what's intended. And, you know, often there are problems in a transaction, and, you know, 99% of the time they're surmountable. As long as you know the issue, then you find the solution to it. You know, we're not about, I think that's another perception, lawyers just like to point out problems, but we don't. We like to point out what their potential pitfalls are and then tell you what the solution might be. You know, and that 1% of cases that for whatever reason it's too big an issue to overcome, and it changes the figures, it makes it not financially viable. It's much better to know that at day one than it is, you know, once you wasted 6 weeks going through the process. You may as well, you know, chalk it up to experience and move on than sort of waste more time than necessary. So I think if we can help you find solutions, that's brilliant. And if you can't proceed, then let's just all move on and do the next deal, because that's far better use of everybody's time.
I agree. That's perfect. Thank you so much. Well, I've loved having all of you live here on the Deal Clinic today. So thank you so much for your time, for your information, for your knowledge that you've shared. I'd like to also thank our attendees, should I say. So thank you to Bowen, Chloe, Mehmet, Michael and Walter, and all the questions that have come through. There isn't anything else coming through, so I'm presuming that they're actually happy with the information that you have all shared. I have shared your links to both your connections, so both your pages. So as previously, attendees, if you'd like to reach out to either Peter and Kelvin at Property Investment Complete, or either Vicky at Royds Whitty King, please do feel free to do that. If you are going to reach out to any of them as a consequence of this conversation, of this live Deal Clinic, or Deal Clinic Live, should I say, please use the hashtag of Deal Clinic so that we can see how we're doing as well, to see where we can improve our services for yourselves and for everyone else. I think with that, I would like to say thank you again to all our attendees and our panelists, and I wish you a great rest of the day and actually a very, very successful 2022. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.